I never shoot on automatic. In my mind, if you're shooting on automatic, what do you need a camera operator for? I like to have the control of iris, focus, depth of field, and yeah, and just to show your creativity with the camera, you know, and that's why I always shoot everything on manual, even audio levels and stuff. If you have audio settings at automatic or whatever, it'll pick up the loudest noise. The truck goes by, picks up that, right? So I like to have everything controllable.
Well, that's interesting because you know, most prosumer cameras that are coming out now, you can do it all in auto. Most professional cameras, you still have to select back and forth, and you know, a professional camera like that, you can put it on manual iris or auto iris. But not focus. Focus is still manual, and it will be for a long time, I think. Focus, autofocus, and a lot of cameras tend to still hunt for that perfect focus. It's getting better. Iris dips and opens, and you can see it sometimes. I know a news shooter who just retired, and he'd been at it for 30 years, and he always shot with auto iris. And I could tell. I don't know if the viewer could tell, but I'm sitting at home watching and go, oh, I know who shot that. I can't understand why anybody would shoot with auto iris.
Never shoot auto, with one exception. So, you know, as part of what I do for Czech Television is, you know, I train news staff. News being, you know, a little bit of a different beast than, you know, production would be. The only exception to what I've just said is that it comes in the use of audio. So I always tell the guys that, because it's really easy to distort digital audio, I always tell the guys that, you know, put it in auto, because at the end of the day you bring back, you know, a story. Now you've got you know, audio that's overmodulated because you set the level in manual as too high or too low, then we have issues in editing. The auto circuits do a really good job of capturing audio. You know, and the only exception that I give them to that rule is if you find yourself in a trying to conduct an interview in a noisy situation, and if you can't, first remove your subject from that environment, then set a manual level, because, as you know, auto circuits tend to pulse with you know, noise and background noise. Never ever shoot in auto iris, and the reason for that is just quite simple. I mean, you know, you've set up a shot, you're shooting something, white car goes by, you know, a sun pops out, something, right, and your picture will flash. It'll either, you know, ramp up or ramp down. So now you've, you know, compromised the quality of your picture.
Sticks 98% of the time. I would say the only time you'd actually use or go handheld for me is in scrums, political scrums, sports, if you're shooting that, like post-game kind of stuff, interviews like that. Because the number one thing that people forget when you're handheld is how you're going to keep that steady. Right? To me, the number one rule is to zoom with your legs, right? Move in closer, pull out wide, move in closer, and always zoom with your legs, right? That way you'll keep your shot kind of steady. And the only other time that I'd go handheld is like if you're doing kind of funky low angle stuff or something. But I always brace myself against something, right? Put a rock under there or lean against a lamppost or whatever to kind of steady out the shot. Other than that, sticks.
But I think the viewer, if they can't tell and put their finger on why it looks low quality, it's subconscious. They'll see unsteady shots, and it's not like, oh, I can keep the camera really steady. I can, yeah, but it's still moving around a lot. So I use the tripod all the time. The big exception is at the legislature, in the hallway, when you're chasing down politicians. You don't have a tripod with you because it'll just get in the way.
Well, here's my take on this. If you're serious about the craft, and it is a craft, if you're serious about photography or videography, then, you know, you want to produce the best pictures that you possibly can. And this is something else I always tell my guys, right? And talk to any editor, anyone that edits. You know, what do they appreciate? They appreciate rock solid, well composed, well exposed, good audio pictures to work with. You present that each and every day to an editor, and you'll be that guy, that editor's favorite videographer. That's just the way it is. There's always exceptions to the rules, and I tell the guys, you should be using your sticks most of the time. The only exceptions would be, you're doing streeters. Nobody enjoys doing streeters, and if anybody ever told you that they did, they're lying to you. It's just streeters off the shoulder. It's a spot news situation. You've got a police situation. There's dogs. You have to move quick. Anything that you have to do that requires you to move from A to B quickly. In order to capture the action, because remember, at the end of the day, it's going to be the information or the content that's important, right? The only thing that's going to make it better is that the quality in which you were able to capture those images and that sound. So there's some situations that the tripod just doesn't make any sense. Spot news would be that. Although accidents, I shoot with a tripod. I mean, why wouldn't I? It's it's an MVI. It's and it might be a bit of a hike, but it's not going anywhere. It's going, it's a situation that's going to be there for some time, and you're usually, because you're not to get in the way, you're usually, seconded to, the sidewalk or the side of the street or the edge of the highway or whatever, right? So you're going to need to use the focal length of your lens, and as you know, the closer you try to get to an image, right, the more shake you're going to, introduce the image by having it on your shoulder. The weight of the camera has something to do with that as well. So. When else would you not, if it's a stylistic thing, if it's, and MTV brought that into favor into the 80s, right? The monkey cam off the shoulder was a stylistic thing. And then there was, in production, there was a number of shows that started coming out with that same sort of, moving camera, a stylistic thing. Generally with off the shoulder, you can't get that, because what you tend to do is stand closer to your subject. For an interview, for example, you tend to stand closer to your subject, but with a tripod, you can move back from your subject. You can, your porter, the mic, you have a 5-foot extension, or you put a lav on them. Now you're able, because with a DSLR, it's easy to get the background out of focus. With a video camera, you can, but it's a little more challenging. So you have to move back. You have to use the focal length of the lens, and you have to use an aperture. That's why you want to go into manual, not auto, because you can do things to manipulate the size of the aperture in order to get the focus out of the background. So you're not going to be able to get that off the shoulder, right? And if it's important to you, as it is to me, to create, and make the best pictures that you possibly can, then, why wouldn't you use a tripod? I mean, you either take it, seriously, and you're a professional. You consider yourself a photographer, a videographer, or you don't, and you're a boffin. And having said all that, people produce the stuff that I would consider crap, and it's found acceptable. So, it's up to you. You make the choice.